The notification lit my phone at 11:52 at night. A forwarded receipt. The Mercer Room. $8,740. Tasting menu. Reserve wine pairing. Service charge. It sat on the screen like a quiet accusation. A message followed immediately from my mother. Francis. Put this on your card. The manager was watching. You embarrassed everyone dressing like that. Before I could lock the phone, a champagne emoji appeared beneath her text. My sister Bryn didn't bother adding words. She never had to. I set the phone face down on my desk. I didn't answer. Silence had always been my role in this family. Silence paid the bills. Silence kept dinners smooth. Silence made me useful. If you're listening to this story while folding laundry, driving home, or lying awake like I was, stay with me. The quiet moments are where the truth usually shows up first. This is a story created by the author of the Revenge Amber channel for educational and inspirational purposes, and it does not portray any specific real-life individual. The phone buzzed again. Francis didn't wait long. "Did you see it?" she said when I answered. She never said hello. I saw the receipt. I replied, "Good. Then fix it," she said. The waiter hesitated. People noticed. People. I repeated. "Yes, people." She snapped. "Not everyone wants to look like they shop at airport bookstores." Bryn's voice cut in, bright and careless. "Mom, don't stress her. She gets weird about money. I get precise about money." I said. She laughed. "Same thing." There it was. The assumption that my role was to absorb discomfort so theirs could stay invisible. "You could have asked first," I said. Francis exhaled sharply. "After everything we've done for you," Bryn added. "It was networking. You wouldn't understand." I ended the call without announcing it. That was new. My hand didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. Something else settled in instead. Calm and heavy. I opened my laptop. Not to send a reply. Not to justify myself. I had spent years explaining. Tonight, I wanted to understand something. I wanted to know when helping turned into expectation, when generosity became debt, and why the bill that finally broke the silence wasn't about money at all. I logged in the way I always did, without ceremony. Username, password, verification code. Another pause while the system checked for things it never found. The dashboard loaded quietly, as if it understood discretion. To my family, I worked with books. That fiction had been useful for a long time. Librarians didn't get challenged. Librarians didn't get audited. Librarians didn't get asked for money with apologies. They got handed bills. The screen filled with accounts, holdings, timelines. I scrolled past everything that belonged to my actual work and opened a folder buried deep enough that no one would ever stumble into it by accident. Caldwell Consolidated Liabilities. I had named it that years ago when pretending it was temporary felt easier. The first file was my father's, Edward Caldwell. Sports betting losses from a decade earlier, bought quietly through a third party and restructured before the wrong people came knocking. I remembered his voice from that time. "I've got it under control," he had said. "You don't—" I'd answered. He laughed. "You worry too much." The next file was my mother's, Frances Caldwell. Credit balances spread across 3 cards, all maxed, all justified as investments in appearance. I had refinanced them into a single obligation with terms so soft they barely qualified as terms. When I told her the balances were gone, she said, "See, things always work out." Bryn's folder was thicker than the others. Her apartment lease sat at the top. Luxury building. Monthly payment higher than my first annual salary. Guaranteed by a holding company I controlled so completely that the building manager never questioned it. Below that were travel advances, brand consultants, wardrobe reimbursements. You have to spend money to make money, Bryn had told me once, tossing her phone onto my couch. "I thought influence was your product," I said. She smiled. "It is. Someone just has to fund it." I leaned back and closed my eyes. I had told myself this was normal. Families helped each other. Older siblings carried weight. Successful children gave back. But looking at the numbers laid out cleanly, stripped of sentiment, I saw the pattern I had refused to name. I wasn't helping when they fell. I was building the ground beneath them and pretending it was coincidence that they never hit it. My phone lit up again. A message from Bryn. "Did you take care of it?" "Not yet," I typed. A moment passed. "Well, don't wait too long. The club doesn't like delays." I stared at the sentence until the words lost their shape. I hadn't been generous. I had been prepaid. I had been the quiet line item that kept their lives balanced and their consciences clear. I closed the folder but didn't log out. Not yet. There were instructions to draft, notices to prepare, things that would take effect in the morning, once offices opened and assumptions stopped working. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to smooth this over. I was thinking about what would happen if I didn't. I didn't send the instructions right away. I left the screen open and sat with the numbers, the dates, the notes I had written to myself over the years. Pay when you can. No interest. Family terms. I had typed those words so many times they felt like a promise. Looking at them now, they read more like a confession. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. "Iris," Edward said, already irritated, as if I had kept him waiting on purpose. "Your mother says you're being difficult." I ended the call. I said, "That's not how family handles things." He replied, "Family doesn't forward restaurant bills without asking." I said. He scoffed, "You're overreacting. You always do this. You make things awkward when they don't need to be." "They needed to be awkward a long time ago," I said. He lowered his voice, the way he did when he wanted to sound reasonable. "You're good with numbers. We all know that. This is just what you do. You take care of things." The words landed exactly where they always had. Useful, reliable, quiet. I didn't agree to that. I said, "You didn't have to." He replied, "You never complained before. That was the contract. Unspoken, unsigned, enforced through habit. As long as I didn't protest, the arrangement stood. As long as I paid, I belonged." I ended the call again. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Draft termination notices, housing support, credit guarantees, lease backing, each one already templated, already approved months ago in moments I had dismissed as hypothetical. I stood and walked into the kitchen. Julian was there, leaning against the counter with a mug he hadn't finished. "They called again," he said. "I know." I replied. He watched my face carefully. "What are you going to do?" I told him the truth. "If I stop, they'll say I abandoned them." "They already say that," he said gently. "If I continue, this never ends." I added. He nodded. "That's the part you're finally saying out loud." I looked at him. "If I do this, they won't forgive me." "They don't forgive you now," he said. "They invoice you." The word cut cleanly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't tell me what to do. He never had. He just named the thing I had been circling for years. I went back to my desk and placed my fingers on the trackpad. Each instruction opened with neutral language. Termination effective next business day. 30 days notice where required. No explanations attached. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. "Have you fixed it yet?" I didn't answer. I clicked send. The system confirmed receipt. Quietly. No alarms. No drama. I closed my eyes and waited for guilt to rush in the way it always had when I disappointed them. It didn't come. What came instead was stillness, sharp and unfamiliar, like stepping out of a room that had been loud for so long I hadn't realized how much noise it held. I understood then what the contract had really cost me. It wasn't the money. It was the belief that love had to be earned in installments. By the time the morning came, the notices would take effect. Offices would open. Accounts would flag. Calls would start again. louder this time. But the contract was already broken. My phone started vibrating before the sun was fully up. Not ringing, vibrating. Short bursts, one after another, like someone knocking harder each time I didn't answer. I picked it up on the 7th alert. "You did this," my mother said without greeting. Her voice was tight, sharpened by panic. My card was declined. I leaned against the counter. "Which one?" "All of them," Frances snapped. "At the cafe, in front of people, in the background." I heard chairs scraping, a server apologizing. The sound of a morning unraveling. "You turned it off," she said. "I know you did. The notices went out last night," I replied. "You didn't warn us," she said. "I gave notice." I said, "You just never read the terms." She inhaled sharply. "You stranded me." "You're at a cafe," I said, "not a desert." Bryn cut in, breathless and indignant. "Mom, let me talk to her." The line shifted. "What is wrong with you?" Bryn said. "Do you know how humiliating this is?" "I know exactly how humiliating it feels when people watch," I said. "That's not the same," she snapped. "It is when you're the one they look at," I replied. She lowered her voice, the way she did when she wanted leverage. "You're jealous. That's what this is. I'm done." I said, "Done with what?" "Funding your life." There was a pause, then laughter, sharp and disbelieving. "You don't get to say that. I just did." The call ended on her breath catching. Not a goodbye. Not an apology. A text followed almost immediately. "Bryn, again? You're really doing this?" I didn't respond. Minutes later, my father's name lit up the screen. I answered on the 3rd ring. "You think you're teaching us a lesson," Edward said. He sounded tired, angry, and very sure of himself. "You're just embarrassing yourself." "I'm not the one calling at dawn," I said. "You don't get to cut us off." He said, "That money isn't yours alone." "It always was." I replied, "You wouldn't have anything without us." He said, "I paid for everything you're standing on." I said, "Including the silence." His voice dropped. "You've been influenced. I've been informed." I said. He exhaled through his teeth. "You're going to regret this. I already paid for it." I said, "I'm just done renewing." The line went dead. By mid-morning, the messages shifted from anger to strategy. Missed calls from numbers I recognized. Emails from people who had never contacted me directly before. Familiar names trying unfamiliar tones. They weren't asking how to fix things. They were asking how to get control back. The first email came just after 10. It wasn't from my parents. It was from a man named Stephen Rowe, a name I hadn't seen in years. Iris. The message began, overly familiar. "Heard there might be some instability on your end. Thought it would be responsible to check in." Responsible. I read it twice. Then a second email arrived, this one from a junior analyst I barely remembered approving years ago. Short, careful, curious. By noon, the pattern was clear. My father wasn't yelling anymore. He was outsourcing. Julian watched me read the messages, one after another. "He's trying to poison the well," he said. "He's trying to remind people he exists." I replied. My phone rang again. Edward didn't wait for me to speak. "You think you can just erase us?" he said. "I didn't erase you." I said, "I stopped financing you. You're calling me a liability now." He snapped. "I didn't say that." I replied, "You don't have to." He said, "Everyone can hear it." I heard the shift in his voice. Less rage, more calculation. I spoke to Stephen. He continued. "I know." I said. "He's concerned." Edward added, "About your judgment." "That's interesting," I said. "He never questioned it when I was paying your debts." Edward paused. "You're making enemies you don't need." "I'm identifying them," I said. The line went quiet. Then his voice hardened. You forget who opened doors for you. I remember who sent invoices through them. I replied. I ended the call and turned to Julian. They're not trying to get the money back, I said. No, he agreed. They're trying to get you back in line. He didn't sound angry. He sounded certain. They don't know how to exist without leverage, he continued. So they're looking for it anywhere they can. Another message buzzed in. Francis this time. Not accusation, not apology, strategy. Let's all calm down, she wrote. This is getting out of hand. I showed Julian the screen. She wants a meeting, I said. She wants a reset, he replied. She wants the old version of me, I said. Julian stepped closer. They're not mad. They lost the money, he said quietly. They're mad. They lost the access. The words settled where the guilt used to sit. I typed a single reply to my mother and didn't send it. I didn't need to. I had already said everything with the notices. They could call partners. They could whisper doubts. They could perform concern. But the structure they relied on was already gone. The assumption that I would absorb discomfort to keep them comfortable no longer applied. They weren't negotiating anymore. They were scrambling. Natalie Shore didn't waste time on pleasantries. She slid the file across the table and tapped the corner with her pen. This wasn't disclosed, she said. I opened it and felt my breath slow. Not stop. Slow. The way it does right before something locks into place. Second mortgage. 3 years old. Principal amount $480,000. I never signed this. I said, I know. Natalie replied. That's why I asked you here in person. She turned her tablet toward me. A scanned signature filled the screen. My name. Perfect curves. Familiar pressure. It looks like mine. I said, it was meant to. She said. Julian leaned forward. When was this executed? Natalie scrolled. Mid-October. 3 years ago. I was in Zurich. I said immediately. I checked. She replied. Board minutes confirm it. You weren't even on the continent. I flipped the page. Use of funds. Marketing disbursements. Brand consultants. International travel advances. For Bryn, I said. For her image. Natalie corrected. And for liabilities attached to it. I closed the file and opened it again. Slower this time. They used my credit to fund her. I said. Yes, Natalie said. And if the loan had defaulted, the bank would have come to you first. Julian's voice stayed level. What does this qualify as? Natalie didn't hesitate. Identity theft. Bank fraud. Aggravated. Given the amount. I looked at my hands. Steady. Prison. I said. Yes. Natalie replied. Mandatory minimums. Silence filled the room. Not shock. Not grief. Recognition. They didn't just expect me to pay. I said. They expected me to take the fall. They expected you to stay quiet, Natalie said. I met her eyes. What happens if I report this? They are charged, she said. Individually. Publicly. And if I don't, then you retain leverage, she said. But it will cost you something else. Julian spoke before I could. Peace. Natalie nodded once. That usually goes first. I stood and paced once across the room, then stopped. They told everyone I was difficult. I said. They said I made things awkward. Natalie closed the file. You made things documented. I turned back to the table. I want the repayment accelerated. Natalie raised an eyebrow. That will trigger foreclosure proceedings. I know, I said. And you want the fraud report prepared? Yes, I said. But not filed? Not yet. Julian watched me carefully. You're giving them a choice. He said. I'm giving them consequences. I replied. Natalie gathered the documents into a clean stack. If we do this, they will understand the power dynamic immediately. They already do, I said. They just think it still favors them. She slid a final page toward me. A draft notice. Clean language. No emotion. Total accelerated obligation, $3,800,000. I signed my name at the bottom. This time, it was real. Natalie stood. I'll have these served formally. When? Julian asked. Tomorrow morning. She replied. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. They thought I was the quiet one, I said without turning back. Natalie's voice followed me. Quiet people tend to hear everything. Outside, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. Can we please talk before you do something you can't undo? I didn't reply. The documents were already moving. They arrived confident. That was the first thing I noticed. Not relieved, not cautious. Confident. Like people who believed the worst had passed simply because they were seated again. My mother smiled as she slid into the chair across from me. I'm glad you came to your senses, Frances said. I came to listen. I replied. My father adjusted his jacket, already scanning the room. This place still does the sea base, doesn't it? Edward said. You always liked consistency. I like records. I said. Bryn dropped her phone onto the table, screen down, as if making a show of restraint. Let's not drag this out, she said. People are watching. The waiter appeared. He didn't look at me. He looked at Julian. Good evening. Mr. Price, he said calmly. Shall I bring the usual? Julian nodded. For the table. Frances's smile tightened. How thoughtful, she said. At least someone here remembers how these dinners work. They ordered generously. Frances waved off the menu prices. Bryn added a wine pairing without looking up. Edward leaned back, satisfied, already acting as if this night would erase the inconvenience of the last week. I waited. When the plates were cleared, the waiter returned with a leather folder. He didn't place it in front of me. He handed it to Julian. Frances blinked. There's been a mistake, she said. No, Julian replied, opening the folder. This is correct. Edward laughed once. Very funny. Iris handles the finances. Not tonight, Julian said. I reached into my bag and placed a second folder on the table. Thicker, heavier. It landed between the breadbasket and Bryn's phone. What's this? Bryn said, already defensive. Documentation, I replied. Edward opened it first. His expression shifted as he read. Lines, figures, dates. This is absurd, he said. It's accelerated repayment, I said. Effective immediately. Frances leaned forward. Accelerated what? Your consolidated obligations, I said. All of them. Bryn snorted. You can't be serious. I am, I said. $3,800,000. Payable within 30 days. Edward's face darkened. You don't have the authority. I do, I replied. I always did. He flipped pages faster now. This is vindictive. This is contractual. I said. Frances pressed her palm to the table. You would do this to your own parents. I did this for my own survival. I said. Bryn's voice cracked. You're trying to ruin me. I stopped protecting you. I said. Julian closed the restaurant bill and slid his card inside. The waiter took it without comment. Edward's hands shook as he reached the last page. He stopped. That signature, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. You're threatening us now, Frances said. I'm informing you, I said. That loan was forged. I have proof. Bryn looked at Edward. What did you do? I handled it. He snapped. You committed a felony. I said. Several. The table went silent. I haven't reported it. I continued. Yet. Frances swallowed. You wouldn't. I would. I said. If I needed to. Edward leaned forward. Voice low. You think you've won. I think this is over. I replied. Julian stood as the waiter returned his card. Approved. Signed. Done. We're leaving, Julian said. Frances reached for my wrist. I pulled away. You can't erase us, she said. I'm not erasing you. I said. I'm accounting for you. Bryn's chair scraped as she stood. You're cruel. I learned from the best. I said. Edward stayed seated, staring at the paperwork like it might change if he waited long enough. As Julian and I walked out, the waiter opened the door. I didn't look back. The table behind us was quiet now, stripped of performance, stripped of assumption. They finally understood the cost of the dinners they never paid for. 30 days passed without another invitation to talk things through. There were no apologies, only notices, deadlines, and the sound of doors closing quietly. The first call came from my mother's number, but it wasn't her voice. Ms. Caldwell, a woman said evenly. This is to inform you that the property has entered final default. I thanked her and ended the call. Bryn tried harder. She sent me a link first, then a message. Please watch before you decide anything. She wrote. I opened it once. Her face filled the screen. Eyes glossy, voice trembling. Sometimes the people closest to you don't want to see you succeed, she said to an audience that barely existed. The viewer count hovered in the single digits. Julian glanced over. She's still performing, he said. She doesn't know how to stop. I replied. 2 days later, Edward left a voicemail. His voice sounded smaller, flatter. They changed the locks. He said, This didn't have to happen. I didn't return the call. Frances tried a different approach. She showed up at my office building, unannounced. Security called me before letting her through. I just want 5 minutes, she said when I met her in the lobby. You have 2, I replied. She smoothed her coat, the gesture automatic. They removed me from the board, she said. I know, I said. After everything I've done, she continued. After everything I paid for, I corrected. Her mouth tightened. You enjoy this. I'm documenting it, I said. She looked at me then. Really looked. Like she was seeing a stranger who had always been in the room. You could still fix this, she said. No, I replied. I could only fund it. She left without another word. The eviction happened on a Tuesday morning. I didn't go. Julian did, to sign the final release. He described it later without drama. They packed quickly, he said. Only what they could carry. Edward's credit was denied that same afternoon. A clerk said the words carefully. I'm sorry. Sir, we can't extend that line. For the first time, no one called me to solve it. That night, Julian and I sat at the kitchen table. He reached for my hand. Are you okay? He asked. I am, I said. The money was gone from their lives. The noise was gone from mine. What remained was quieter than I expected. Not triumph, not relief, just space where obligation used to live. And in that space, I didn't feel empty. I felt finished. The sale closed on a Thursday afternoon. The attorney read the figures out loud, careful and neutral, as if distance could soften what they represented. After fees and obligations, she said, the remaining equity totals just over $3 million. Julian squeezed my hand under the table. I nodded once. Transfer it, I said, as discussed. She hesitated, then looked up. All of it. Yes, I replied. To the trust. The paperwork moved quickly after that. No ceremony. No press. The scholarship fund was set up under a neutral name, focused on first-generation students who didn't have anyone to fall back on, the kind who learned early how expensive silence could be. Later that night, Julian watched me close my laptop. That's it, he said. That's it. I agreed. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unfamiliar number. It's Bryn. The text read, I know you blocked me everywhere else. I stared at it for a long moment before replying. I hope you're okay. I typed. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You took everything. She wrote, "I stopped paying." I replied, "That's the same thing." She said, "No." I wrote, "It isn't." I didn't wait for her response. I deleted the thread and set the phone down. Julian poured 2 glasses of water and slid one toward me. "You didn't keep anything," he said. "I kept myself," I replied. He smiled, soft and proud. That was always the point. I opened my laptop one final time and navigated to the folder that had once ruled my nights. Caldwell Consolidated Liabilities. I didn't hesitate. I deleted it and emptied the archive. The system asked me to confirm. I did. The room felt different afterward. Not lighter. Clearer. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt like your worth was measured by what you could provide instead of who you were, stay with us. Stories like this travel far because they're rarely told out loud. Sharing them, listening to them, passing them on quietly builds a kind of solidarity that doesn't ask for permission. Julian stood and held out his hand. "Ready," he said. "Yes," I replied. Some families inherit wealth, others inherit debt. I inherited both, learned the cost of each, and chose what I would carry forward. Everything else, I finally left behind.